Hello, and welcome to Leadership Trail Mix. I am Miguel Oliveira, and for the next 5 to 10 minutes, we'll be together looking at one of the many ingredients that compose this art and science we call people leadership. Today, we reach episode 30, and this number holds a very special meaning to me. It was in my 30th birthday that I looked at the world around me and felt like I could belong to it, being my whole self. I threw a party, bringing people from different spaces of my life that I had never allowed to meet, because each of them knew a different version of me. So my 30th was a very important milestone. And as I look back at the Leadership Trail Mix journey, I'm filled with gratitude and excitement for what is to come. 30 episodes. Wow. Today, for episode 30, we have a guest, and a very special one, an international guest. Louise Thompson is a communications professional who, after over 20 years' experience in corporate communications for different industries, now works as a leadership coach for communication executives and leaders in general. Beyond one-on-one coaching on how to leverage leadership brand as a career accelerator, Louise also offers the Confident Leader program, which has been a hit. She can be found on LinkedIn and also on TikTok as Lead with Louise, where she shares bite-sized content with more than 35,000 followers. Louise, welcome to Leadership Trail Mix. I'm so pleased you're here.
Oh, hi, Miguel. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I'm going to just jump right in.
Please.
I think on the realm of communication, one thing that I've seen leaders underestimate is the power of it, the power of communication. So the leaders I've seen personally being the most effective showed up authentically and as a result inspired the audience to take action. What have you as a communication professional seen work?
So there are a couple of things. I worked in corporate communications for many years before I became a leadership coach. Number one is all leaders need to be great communicators, but you can do it in your own authentic way. So the best leaders and the best communicators have what I call a really powerful leadership brand, but it is authentic to them. So if you think about leaders throughout history, think about Steve Jobs. Innovative was his leadership brand. Jacinta Ardern, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, compassion was her leadership brand. So think about who you are as a leader and what that means for your leadership style and your communication style. And that links to number two, which is be authentic and really live your values out loud. So I often say to leaders that I coach, you need to wear your values on your sleeve. People really need to see and understand in the way that you communicate, the way that you behave, what you value and why as a leader. And that gives them something to connect to and align with. The third thing is based on, I spent many years working in pretty complex public sector organizations, and the amount of jargon and acronyms that were thrown around, and everybody in the meetings were, always too scared to put their hand up and say, I actually don't know what that means, is speak human. So just drop the jargon and actually speak in human terms that people, again, can connect with and understand. And the fourth thing is just to make sure that you listen. So when we're communicating, listening is actually the first and most powerful thing that we can do to show that we take the people that we're talking to seriously, that we want to understand their experience. And that, again, gives us a way to more meaningfully connect with them. So those are the four things that I would say. But above all, be authentic and trust yourself.
I love that, Louise. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I just want to double click on one thing. When you say listen, in the world of public speaking, I'm assuming you're talking not only about the listening with your ears, but listen with your eyes and all your other senses. Is that a fair assessment?
That's exactly it. Yeah. So actually leaning in and connecting with people and letting them see that you are listening in the way that you behave with them, respond to them, and the way that you are in that conversation.
That's great. That's awesome. Moving topics. So in one of the videos that I watched of you, you talked about the concept of Nemawashi and the application of it in corporate world. I love your take on it. So if you could tell us a little bit more.
Yes. So for people that don't know, Nemawashi is a Japanese term and it's rooted in gardening and it does mean to dig around the roots. The idea being that if you want to move a tree, you have to really carefully navigate around the root system so that you can move the tree carefully and achieve your stated
Hmm.
aim. And this is a way of thinking about how you can prepare for meetings to make sure that you land proposals, ideas, reports, recommendations with impact. And I first learned about this when I was doing some work. I was a new corporate leader and I went to a board meeting, presented a report, and I thought in my head, this is brilliant. People are going to love it. And actually, I was kind of met with a wall of blank stares. And it's because I
Ooh.
hadn't practiced the art of Nemawashi. So, what that meant for me was investing time in my stakeholders and making sure that I was prioritizing the needs of those stakeholders in that meeting before we got to the meeting. I wasn't having my report or my presentation just land with them cold. They weren't getting surprises in that meeting. In practice, what that means is actually spending some time before the meeting, talking to your stakeholders,
Hmm.
outlining what you want to talk about, understanding their take, their point of view, maybe any pockets of resistance, and understanding why. So that when you get to the meeting, everybody's cited on the topic, and you can actually then have much more meaningful discussions and ultimately make better decisions because you aren't starting cold and everyone's starting with the same amount of information and context.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's groundbreaking. It really is.
It's really powerful. It really, really
I
is.
know. I know. And I think as a follow up, Louise, in this world of ours where meetings take over our calendars many times back to back,
Yeah.
are there any tactics that you can share with us to truly allow time and energy for Nemawashi?
So I think the first thing is actually recognizing that Nemawashi, or the art of investing time and building relationships with your key internal stakeholders. If you're a leader, you have to recognize that this is part of the job.
Hmm.
It's not an added extra. It's not something you kind of get to after a day full of meetings. It is part of your role and responsibility. And then you can prioritize it as such on your calendar. So that's number one. Number two is to take a good long, hard look at your calendar, maybe do an energy audit and see where your time is going and be ruthless. Ask yourself, does this need to be a meeting? Does this need to be a meeting? Am I allowing myself breaks between meetings? If not, why not? And start to make some decisions based off that. I think for most of us in corporate roles these days, we are all too familiar with the 10 meeting a day kind of rhythm, but it doesn't have to be like that. And as leaders, we have the opportunity to help shape, hopefully, a slightly different kind of culture where there is more time for these types of conversations.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And I hope we can get there. It's funny because while you're talking, I was thinking pre-COVID, I remember having time at my desk, just kind of doing work
Yeah,
and allowing people to come and drop in and have a conversation and having like a water cooler conversation.
yeah,
And it seems that COVID kind of took it away from us. So
exactly.
I think there is definitely time for us to I would say regain that right of having those blocks of time, right?
Yeah, I hope so. And again, seeing it as a priority, that's just as important as a meeting is. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Your perspective on boundaries,
Uh-huh.
which kind of I think is a great segue here. So your perspective on boundaries was actually the first piece of content I saw from you. And I remember having an aha moment when I heard you present the idea of boundaries protecting not only the individual, but also the work and consequently the company. So can you expand a little bit on what you mean by that?
I can. And I am, full disclosure, someone who has struggled with boundaries in the past in my corporate career. And I spend a lot of time on it as a coach because, yeah, you know how it goes. A lot of my clients really struggle with it. So this idea came to me when I was thinking about boundaries. And of course, boundaries are an act of self care. Absolutely, and they should be, but they are also a way of protecting your time, your energy, your focus, so that you can prioritize doing your best work for yourself, for your team, for your company.
Hmm.
And when you put it that way, boundaries become an essential part of good leadership because I usually give the example because this happened to a client of mine. They were often in the routine of doing a full day's work and then at midnight pulling the laptop into bed and doing some more work because they felt they needed to catch up. And I asked them the question, I said, are you doing your best work in that moment? And the answer was no. So then when you think about it that way, why don't I want to put myself in the position where I can do my best work, where I can thrive, where the company will benefit because they've got someone that's in a position to focus on doing their best work. They have their energy freed up because they have clearer boundaries. And that was an aha moment for this client who said, okay, now I get it. I'm not doing my best work at midnight in bed. Perhaps I need to rethink that boundary. So for me, it's just a way of expanding the benefits of what a good, respectful working boundary can look like, not just for you, but for your team, for the work that you do, for the company that you are part of leading. And hopefully that will help some other people out there rethink their relationship with boundaries as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Louise. It's definitely helping me rethink my relationship with boundaries.
I'm glad. Yeah. And as I said, I struggle it too, but it's a constant reminder of why boundaries are important, I think.
That's awesome. And I kind of suspect that I know where we're going to go with this question, but in every episode of Leadership Trail Mix, we end with a call to action. Sometimes even more than one call to action, to be honest. It's basically based on the discussion that we have. What actions would you recommend those listening to us take this week to be a better people leader?
So I think first and foremost is take some time and space to reflect on who you are as a leader and how you want that to come across. And that's often why people go into coaching, because they need that protected time. So when you think about who you are as a leader and as a communicator, it needs to be based on who you are authentically, your values, your strengths, your professional purpose. So put all of that together and you start to get a really good picture of your leadership identity. So that's number one. Number two is to invest in ways that you can become a more effective communicator, as we've talked about. Number three, take an energy audit. Think about those meetings that you don't need so that you've got more time for Nemawashi, spending time with your stakeholders. And then number four, don't be afraid to implement and reinforce boundaries that are not just going to help protect you, but help you thrive and do your best work.
Wow. There are call to actions there for everyone. Louise, thank you so very much for sharing your knowledge and so many powerful insights with us today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, Miguel. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
So that's all for today. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, or just want to say hi, send me an email, miguel@leadershiptrailmix.com. It's always awesome to hear from you. Also, if you can think of someone who needs to hear this content, please send it their way. This is the best way to support this podcast. Thank you for listening. Take care and talk soon.